welcome to episode 3 of Know Your History. I'm Karson Kiesinger, the Reference and Adult Services Librarian at the Bennington Free Library.
And I'm Bob Tegart of the Bennington Historical Society.
I had a lot of things planned for today, but first, Bob has to look at all the cool maps at the Bennington Free Library.
Hold it a minute. You know me, I gotta have my maps. Here's the Hinsdale of 1835. And
Now we just read.
And we just.
You know what? I need my glasses.
Yeah, here's Main Street. And this must be North Street. And I can't see.
I know.
I don't think.
In theory, the Baptist Church should be on there.
Yeah.
Because we just confirmed.
Yeah, here it is.
1830.
Baptist Church is right here.
Yes.
And then there's buildings through here, but I don't think they're any of ours. This footprint doesn't look the same, and there looks like small buildings. But that's the East Village, District 4, Baptist Church. And that's not the Baptist Church of today, but it's the one that probably was just built, right?
1830 was the Sites and Structures Survey, and it said it was right near Valentine Street.
That's the first map, 1835, and you can see Bennington's just starting to get built up.
And this is just preserved on the wall.
That's great. You can see it.
You can see it.
Here's one of the classic bird's eye maps, 1877. But before we look at that, here's 1852. Now this morning, we looked at this and I got kind of nervous. Here's Main Street. Here's Silver Street. Union ends right here. It doesn't come over at this point, but so the library would be here. It's not there yet, right?
1865 is the library, so not yet.
Yeah, so the library should be there, and eventually Union Street will curve over and connect over here someplace, I guess. But there's the church, and now I saw this building here. I said, oh my gosh, that's our building. And there's the outbuilding. I said, that looks pretty familiar. But I guess that when he bought...
There were buildings on the property.
Looking at the deed and everything, it looks like there was buildings. He must have knocked them down and then built something better, right?
And moved them back.
And what do we got there?
This is the 1877, so this one actually has the
that's
library
a good one.
on it.
It's got the Baptist Church.
I didn't grab my glasses yet, but I think was it that one?
Yeah, here's Main. There's the library with the cupola, right? And then you go down here. Here's
actually, it's not the cupola. Sorry. Because that's the 1936 building. So it's this Main Street building.
Oh, okay.
The brick building.
Okay.
Sorry.
Take that. Yeah,
I get.
Yeah. So that'd be a good project someday. So this is Valentine here. Turns into
Willow. Remember Willow? Yeah.
There's the Baptist Church of that era, and they must have torn that down and replaced that. And then down here, 3 down would be our building would be here. So that's 1877. So you can see the difference between that footprint and this footprint. So that he must have knocked the building down and started over again.
Yeah, and
that's 1877. That's a great map. Quiet room.
This is Bob's favorite map.
This is 1894. Now, in order to see this, I climb up on the table when nobody's around. But
or a chair, maybe.
There's Main Street. There's Union, and now Union cuts over, so that's completed, 1891. And the Baptist Church, you can see the footprint. It's the more substantial church. And 1, 2, 3. So we're right over here. And I took pictures of that, so I can show you more in-depth pictures. I think it says Potter is the one name here, which is guy that owns the land of the south. So that's a good map because it shows you footprints and it shows the neighborhood and everything. I think that's pretty cool.
And also, well, and then, I love the detail around the sides. We talked about this with maps.
Yeah.
It's also kind of almost a little bit of a town directory at the time. Physicians and surgeons, manufacturers, jeweler.
Oh, we got now. Let's see. I don't think Richie had his business at this point, did he? Because dry goods, Drysdale, Lamar, Nichols. I forgot who he bought it from. School Street, Courthouse. I forgot who he bought it from, but I don't see it mentioned there. Must be too early.
Okay, Bob, map time is over.
Okay, I'm refreshed and I'm mapped out.
Let's go back to the Vermont History Room and dive into the Great White Binders. 16 binders called the Sites and Structures Survey.
Oh boy.
I mean, we call it the CAT-TV property. Obviously, it wasn't always the CAT-TV property.
Well, would Richie be in there?
Richie?
Just for the fun of it?
Well, I know it's the Richie block, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, that might
So
be
we
in
did
both
do
places.
that. See, Bob runs in and goes, "Is Richie in there? Let's find him." So it is the Richie block.
Well, that's the downtown store.
Yes.
So the Richie house is not in there then.
No, because you have to think in '87, like how did they?
Okay, probably under CAT-TV.
I always say to people, let's just go for street address.
Yeah.
So we knew the CAT-TV house was on Main Street. That has not changed since the beginning. It was always on.
The numbers change, but we don't. But
It was always on Main Street. So
Main Street, what's
look,
that?
I'm getting Volume 4, Part 3.
Can I get that one?
Main Street. Please,
Part
if
3.
you would. I think 4 has 4 parts.
Yeah, there's Volume 4, Part 3.
There we go.
See,
Volume 4.
you've taught me to go slow and pay attention.
Yes. Let's pay attention. Let's follow the actual written directions. So
Directions?
And there's tabs. You're
Tap
using
on-
look at that.
Tap on Main Street.
You're using the organizational
Main Street.
guides there.
Main Street. Now they're by number order, of course.
In number order, we know it is 625. I have a copy of it, so I can tell you that it's actually
645.
173. It's going to be 43. We're going to cheat a little bit. So those are the page numbers. You get used to this after a while. They kind of did paginate it. So it'll be 43173 is where the actual house. This is my copy of
626.
it.
625.
There
What do you know?
she is.
And we got a picture of it.
We have a picture of it, and in the late 80s, it was the Gibney Funeral Home.
Yeah, it starts with a picture. And
Yep.
you got that picture
All
there.
the entries start, this is why I was writing on this copy. All entries, yep, most of the entries have not always a
626.
very big photo. This is kind of nice.
The narrative is here someplace.
So, yep, the entry, well, you want to start just with the entry quickly? There is a narrative, yep, it's 43173, so it's back a little bit. It really just describes the architectural features of the house, which is kind of beyond I mean, you love this.
Some I
let you.
used to.
L plan, 2-story, gable front, Italiante house, and all of the bay windows.
625.
And the
Yeah.
double leaf, so we're looking at the same.
Yeah, and it's got a little, this is like the old real estate books. You used to have the little picture of the house,
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
there's a
that's
picture of the
right.
house, and that's the same one as
Yep,
the big picture.
yep.
But
So,
it's
this description.
it's good if you don't know what the number is of the house. If you're like, what's that house? You can look down here and say, well, that's the one I'm looking for.
That's the
You
house.
can do it that way visually.
That's the house. Yep, so it describes the house. If you flip over, it even describes there's a little carriage barn that we've heard is still, there's a little barn in the property that we've heard is still there, used for storage. What the roof is made of, all this kind of fun stuff.
Brick face
So-
foundation, that's kind of interesting to know. Carriage barn, circa 1866 as well. And then you can look at the surrounding buildings too. Like the
Yes.
building next door is 1830.
Yeah.
So you can get a feel for, and that's the other ones down here, 18. So very well, I'm looking at the surrounding houses, they're all like 1830. So that supports our idea that there was a building on this property he knocked down. Because all the neighbors are about that era, every one of them. So this is a newbie.
More recent.
Yeah.
So sometimes what you find in here, we don't have it in this one, but I've done research for people who are like, oh, my house is this, and I'll find it. But at the end or at the name of it, it might be like the so-and-so house. It'll have a name associated with it historically that people didn't know about. And then that gives us a hook to go start researching that person for them. But in this case, a lot of stuff also came from, so at the beginning, one of the things that I only learned over time and with patience, I have to say, is that at the beginning of this section, this is the Main Street section,
Oh, yeah.
We have a write-up of Main Street itself, and it's
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
1, 2, it's like 3.5 pages about the significance of Main Street. Safford and Samuel Robinson in
1762.
all the stages of development.
Yeah.
It's really,
Well, yeah.
it's really something.
You get to the end of it, it says the western end of the Main Street was a site of intensive residential development around the turn of the century.
Where are you at? You're on, he's always ahead of me.
Well, I'm
He's
at the
on page
very
70.
end.
I'm
I'm at the end.
I'm in the end. He's in the end. I'm on page 2, Bob. Okay, what?
Well, you were talking about development of the area.
It's fine. It's
And
fine.
it talks about Main Street, the 3 principal religious edifices at the end. So that's our neighborhood. And the western end, which is again our neighborhood,
And here's your
residential development turn of the century.
Baptist church at
You know?
1830.
Yeah.
That was up in there.
Yeah.
That's a piece. So that I had highlighted that because we've been using the Baptist church as a marker to find things. So that gave us the date of that. I also wanted to show you. This is the same page. The Roman Catholics constructed their first stone church, now part of the Bennington Museum complex.
Oh, yes. The other direction.
At the west end of Main Street in 1854. There you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the museum.
There's the museum. So date recorded is August 1987, just to kind of maintain when
Yeah,
this was
that's-
captured.
That's a pretty good write-up. You know,
It's a great write-up.
you know, the write-up of the street gives you a feeling of the development, you know, so.
Oh, and the Hinsdale map, I kind of wanted to point out. This mentions, so we just looked at the Hinsdale map in the hallway, and there it is.
Yeah.
So it's like you've got to,
It gives you, well, and then you can go to that map if you want and
go to
see
that
what it's
map.
talking about, you know.
yeah. I was actually, there were people in yesterday looking at stuff, and we were having this discussion about how you find something in one spot, you find something in another spot, and you kind of run and start reading it. But if you don't slow down and put your pieces together, we've demonstrated this, I think, well.
Yes, in the town hall, in the town offices there, we
How
were
you kind of have to,
chickens with no heads.
and you got to keep your notes and everything. And there's one other thing that I do want to bring up about this survey that pertains to the property, and that is the Ritchie block.
The Ritchie block.
Because you mentioned, and we can pull this if we want,
Let's
or we
see,
can
what,
go with my photocopy.
We'll go with your photocopy.
Okay.
By the time I find it, it'll be 5
So,
minutes from now.
Well, that's okay. So remember, you very smartly said, what is Ritchie in? Is Ritchie in the binders? What if all we know is Ritchie?
Yeah.
So in binder 1, there is information about the Ritchie
There was
block.
the Ritchie block. Yeah.
And it was this is part of its nomination form for the National Register of Historic Places. So this is the whole block.
Yeah, which is a little different than what we got here.
Yes.
So that's a little more in depth,
Yes.
probably.
I think so because
Yeah.
it has to be listed, and it's you can even find out like who owned the property at that time. But this is lots of pages of information, and
Now, is
just
that
kind
in
of,
here? Is the National Register
yeah,
stuff?
their nomination forms are in here.
But they're in a separate binder.
Yeah, so it's
Okay,
just
I'm
under.
not gonna find that
it's
in
under
here.
Ritchie. No, they're all together, kind of. If they were part of the National Register of Historic Places or part of just the survey. I'm not going to pretend. I'd have to double check the nitty gritty of it all. But it all kind of got done, I think, around the same time.
Yeah. Well,
So because when you had a team of people surveying, you did it.
Yeah, this is a more extensive thing, and this has got to go to the state for approval
This-
and
yes.
yada, yada, yada. Then it gets
Yes.
listed on the register.
Yep, exactly. So
And,
stop
that must
pulling
be
my.
a-
So I want to just double check. Okay, I'm not going to double check. Anyway, the date on that I think is all around the same. But the main thing one of the things that I know we grabbed out of here when we first started looking at everything was that we didn't know a lot about Alexander K. Ritchie. So there's a whole section 8, significance of the property, that actually this is kind of where we got the hook of born in Perth, Scotland in 1852.
Yeah.
Alexander Kenneth Ritchie immigrated to the U.S. at the age of 21. Dry goods store in
Yep,
Pittsfield.
yep.
This is all the
And
things
that was all stuff we verified through
Mm-hmm.
census and through ancestry research and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And it's good sometimes to read it and then verify it. Find the source and make sure that you got the right information. And that was all correct.
Yeah, and it talks about all of the ways that he moves around. Oh, and what did I want to say about Ritchie? There's other things that we'll kind of see in his obituary, but apart from his dry goods firm, A.K. Ritchie became active in local financial and civic affairs, a selectman in the town of Village, a member of the board of trustees of the village, chosen as president of Bennington County National Bank in 1907. And then again, this also gives us the date of his death,
Good stuff.
March 27th,
Yeah.
1911. So, and
Yeah,
wait,
ta-da.
we're going to tie into the
Drum
previous.
roll, please.
Go ahead.
One of Ritchie's two sons, Harry McGregor, clerked for his father and soon the manager of the store. So, yeah, it is. And
I had to do it.
We found that out in the will, too. That
I couldn't resist having you read McGregor again. The other thing that this does is it cites a lot of great sources, illustrated and descriptive Bennington. So you can actually look at the end.
stuff.
Yeah, of all of the sources, the places that research was completed to find this information. So you can trace it back. And you can also dive into these yourself and find even more.
yeah.
So that was a really quick overview of the Sites and Structures Survey, but we have so much that I have to keep going. So, all right, let me take a beat here. So one of the big resources here that actually leads to other things, but are the newspapers.
Yeah.
The fact that we have the Bennington banner on microfilm starting, and I always have to check my
That's
cheat
the
sheet.
problem with microfilm. It comes in and out. You know, there's some years we got, some years we don't got.
Here's we got. Well, yes. So we have microfilm from about 1903 to the present, which is really great, and you can come here and use it. I also like to talk about where you can get it for free online, because there are quite a few. There's a few places. One of the places that you can get it for free online is a wonderful resource from the Library of Congress called Chronicling America. And I tell everyone
That's
about this that I meet. Every genealogy, historical researcher,
Yeah,
I'm like,
that's-
check Chronicling America.
That's every newspaper in America, just about. Many newspapers.
Many newspapers.
Yeah, not all,
I
but
mean, it's like
it's
the
got a broad
biggest,
scope.
It's the biggest database, and I actually printed from the. Oh, here we go again, needing these. Printed from the main sheet so I could. It's America's historic newspaper pages from 1777 to 1963.
Kinda.
And yeah, it's not every. You can't digitizing every
Yeah.
small collection is really difficult, but. Through the Vermont Digital Newspaper Project, we know, and I lost mine, we know that what was digitized from the banner is the years 1877, 1888 to 1899, and 1903 to 1922.
Yeah.
So,
So if you're looking at the 1940s,
no.
you're up the creek. You got to use the microfilm.
Well, you're not. You just have to come, come and see me. Come and see me, sir. Or call and we can, find it and we can email it to
Yeah.
you. We can capture a JPEG or PDF and we can email it
Yeah,
to you.
you got a real good source there, real good
Fine.
machine.
Oh, man. It's, yes. We can scan and it's wonderful. I looked up Nelson Thayer. Which
Nelson
is kind of
Thayer.
an early...
He's the first guy that bought the property from Patchen
Yep.
back in 1866.
Who built the house, according to what we've read from Anne. We're still
Yeah.
we want to find a little more about that. But this is literally a capture, because sometimes it's easier just to capture, of the day papers. These are actually most of these I've seen are handwritten, so this is really nice.
Yeah,
I think this
that's got
may
actual-
have been a journal he had that had page numbers on it.
Crazy.
Where he's got entries about, who died. Look at this beautiful penmanship.
Yeah.
Died born. So there's Nelson Thayer, died Friday morning,
Yeah, 1874.
April 17th, 1874. And that's where
Yeah.
we
Thayer.
get,
Thayer dies, his wife Lucretia retains the home.
yeah. So it's just another, you got something you're pulling up? I love
Oh,
this
carry
stuff.
on.
Carry on. Carry on, he says. Okay. Well, I just wanted to briefly, again, there's lots of bits and pieces, but that is the historic day papers. And, all right.
I couldn't find his obituary. I tried in Ancestry. Couldn't find an obituary for him. got everybody else, but not.
That's yeah, and that's why I was looking in the papers, and all there was a handwritten note. So it's okay. So moving down the timeline, one of the big things from Thayer to Richie, Thayer to Richie.
Yeah.
And we could talk more about Richie, but we've kind of talked about him a lot. And of course, there's a huge obituary in the Banner about Richie.
He was a big shot, you know.
He was there's the Richie block and all of that kind of thing. But we, of course, were trying to, get a continuum of information. So from Richie, we found that Daniel B. Keeler was the next owner of the house.
Yeah.
And one of the first ways we found this is this tiny, let's see, it's 2 sentences. I have a copy because I blew it up from
Oh, that's the...
It's 2 sentences in the Bennington Evening Banner, May 5th, 1917, page 3. This is we're very accustomed to. We'll get a date, and then you have to, pretty much scan the page and find it. Daniel B. Keeler of Valentine Street. Yep, and here we have it in
page 3. Yeah, what a find. Daniel B. Keeler of Valentine Street purchased the Richie house on Main Street. That's...
And then the next sentence, I can't help it. I love the paper. After some repairs are made, he will take possession at a later date.
Yeah.
So he did not move right in.
And we confirmed that too with the deeds.
Yes. Yes. But it's really nice to, there's the dry part of the deed, and then you get a little flavor in the newspaper.
Well, and also on 1895, when Richie owned it, the Bennington Semi-Weekly Banner, page 4, A.K. Richie is repainting his residence on Main Street, July 5th, 1895, right after 4th of July.
I made you put those in that. Yeah. I was like, put that in there.
Yeah.
Yes. Because it's
all
the flavor.
And we found a lot of stuff about Thayer left his house to Lucretia. And then we found a lot of information about Richie. And before he owned the house, he married Haiti. And his business directory showed him in Pittsfield as a clerk. He's living with his wife. He's living with his in-laws. So he wasn't a rich guy. Then he buys the R.K. Hassam's Dry Goods in 1882. That was in the Banner. And then he took his oath of office, oath for citizenship, 1884, and we got a copy of that. He'd renounce all his allegiance to Queen Victoria.
Yes, in his oath of citizenship.
And then 1885, Richie bought the house. And he bought the dry goods. Then Richie sold to Richie. And that was probably the store. And then Richie Dry Goods is in the directory, and there's ads for Richie's Dry Goods.
It's all those.
And then it goes on from there.
Yep, Richie, 619, and then we'd seen the maps, and the time changed. We did notice, so Richie sells to Keeler, who's a superintendent at Bradford Mills, which we saw in the directories.
And what you might want to mention, the thing with am I jumping ahead here?
Yep, you are, but that's okay. Are you talking about
No, I'm talking
Keeler?
about, that's something else.
The next flavor, for me, and I know I mentioned this the first time we recorded, was there's a librarian in this story.
Yes.
And
there's a Civil War soldier.
Do you want to talk about? I don't have the Civil War soldier piece. That's you. There's a librarian in this story.
Well, Thayer had a son.
Okay.
Edward, and I got his picture here. He was a lieutenant in the Civil
Look
War.
at the picture. Oh wow. He didn't show me this before.
Oh, sure I did. Didn't
I? We have so many pieces.
Yeah, there he is.
Oh,
but he died. Okay. He was at Gettysburg, and he came home and died a year later. So he wasn't killed in the Civil War, but he died a year later. Whether it was from battle fatigue or what, or he just keeled over, I don't know. But he died, and he was only death 1864, age 30.
Okay.
He was in the Battle of Gettysburg, 1863. So I'm not sure what the cause of death was. It doesn't say. But there's an interesting thing. There was a Civil War soldier, and we got his picture. So it was one of the Thayer kids, Edward Thayer. So it's a
he fit into the national history a little bit, you know?
Yes, and they all
Yeah.
do. All of their lives
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
and tell the story of what was happening and what was happening in town at that time, which is a really nice segue. And the
Yeah.
fact that he died at 30, the librarian that I just discovered by accident because I was using the Banner Index, actually, Josephine Keeler was the daughter of Daniel B. Keeler. And he was manager of Bradford Mill, but his daughter Josephine died at the age of 24. And she actually was known to have a heart condition, apparently. That's what her obituary said. But that was something that I just searched the index. I searched the last name Keeler, and suddenly there were these entries. Josephine Library Rep, March 16th, 1915. I'm like,
Wait a minute.
yes! But then Josephine E. Death, August 4th, 1915. And I was like, oh my gosh. So one of the interesting things, and I have to tell you this, because I didn't tell you this before. So we're in this room, and there's pictures of people. There's Trenor Park, and and we talked
All
about
these
this at the
dudes.
museum too. All the people who are around us that
Yeah.
we didn't know, we
All
didn't
the
always
all
know
the
their
white
stories.
guys.
So in this room, and it's been here, and it took me, I don't know, to
Right,
find it.
right.
The social room. So the social room of the library was downstairs in the basement, actually. So this is kind of a certificate, a plaque from 1957. The social room was made possible through the initiative and efforts of, so there's Florence Moses, librarian, the gifts and the work of Daniel J. Frank and Elizabeth K. Hurley in memory of their sister Josephine, librarian, 1913 to 1915. So there's
Okay. And there was
Josephine
Josephine Thayer.
Keeler.
Keeler.
This is the Keeler family.
Okay.
That gave some money to make the social room downstairs, which now, of course, we sort books in, but used to be this hub of activity where they would show movies in the basement, and it was cool, and
Yeah.
it was kind of this. I was like, oh, there's Joseph. There she is in the history room.
1913 to 1915.
Yes.
So that's
her,
that's 1913.
and that's up here. Oh, and by the way, we should.
Now Richie, her
is
father died in
tragic.
1911. So that was after her father.
No, that's
is-
Richie.
Wait a
That's
minute.
Richie. You're looking at Richie.
Oh, this is a Thayer? Whatever.
It's okay. I jumped to Keeler.
She's a Thayer.
She's a Keeler.
She's a Keeler.
Yep. She's Josephine Keeler.
Keeler. Okay, let me see.
I don't know. So she doesn't die until 1915, and I don't know if you put her in the timeline as
I
much
didn't.
because I had just said,
Yeah.
I found a librarian, which is so exciting.
Okay.
But I did want to, when we go out to the film, I want to kind of take a moment when we go out and I load it for her father's obituary, which was in February of 1934. I do have to say, I couldn't help myself, and I kind of went on the library.
Richie Death.
Richie Death. Yeah, we're going to look at that.
I got that right here.
But Josephine's obituary, I'm backing up again. Josephine's obituary.
Josephine the librarian.
Josephine the librarian, who died August 4th of 1915. This
Oh, wait,
is the
she-
piece.
The librarian died in 15.
The
Wow.
librarian died in 15. So Josephine passed away during the night, death being due to heart disease with which the young woman had been afflicted for some years. So this was, I think, kind of a known thing.
Wow.
But the interesting piece, and you had heard of these, but I had not, Miss Keeler, accompanied by her sister, Miss Elizabeth L. Keeler, who donates some money in memory of her sister,
Okay.
Miss Keeler attended the opening session of the Chautauqua last evening and retired apparently in her usual health. Realizing that because of the heart difficulty, she required longer hours of rest, she was not called with the other members of the family this morning. Later, when someone entered her room to awaken the young woman, it was found that she had passed away in her sleep. So I'm reading this and I'm looking at this Chautauqua,
Yeah.
and I was like, "What's a Chautauqua? I don't." So I
Yeah.
did some more digging. I will confess that this book, the internet and Googling does help you find things.
Sometimes.
Using quotes, I did. I was using quotes.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's a Chautauqua? What is this? There was an entry in Google Books about this postcards from Vermont, and this book is in the history room.
All right.
Yay! And it has a chapter about festivities. Where is it? Parades and celebrations.
All right.
So we're kind of again back in the early 1900s, where, and you know, what would you do? You'd go to town for almost any reason, right? I mean, this was high fun. We have Mayfest now. You know, you gather in town. Vermont cities and towns, even small villages, organize parades several times a year. You know, Memorial Day, Battle Day. Parades often coincided with other events or celebrations. Old Home Day, the circus coming to town. Chautauqua, the county fair, soldiers marching off to war or returning from war. So there's another connection. The traveling, so apparently Chautauquas were like kind of lecture series.
Yeah, it was an art colony, and they had traveling lectures, I guess.
Yeah, self-improvement, good citizenship, Shakespearean plays, all kinds of things. This book explains the traveling Chautauqua visited many Vermont towns and cities between 1904 and 1932. All a town needed was a railroad and enough paying customers to support the 7-day event.
Oh, wow, 7 days, wow.
The name Chautauqua comes from the institution founded on Lake Chautauqua in western New York State in 1873. There, middle-class Americans gathered in the summer to study, listen to lectures, participate in non-denominational Protestant services.
We went there once.
All that. Did you?
We went there for we lived in Buffalo, we went there.
Love it. So there are still, I think I found one, Colorado still, and they might be experiencing a little revival again. There's a lot of stuff.
So she went to one of those and she came home and died.
She went to the Bennington Chautauqua, and there is actually, there's a postcard, I have to tell you. This is a parade in Bennington on Battle Day, circa 1912, since you love pictures.
Yeah.
It was Battle Day in 1912, a field day, and Chautauqua Week.
Oh, okay.
So all of that was happening, and here's the shot.
Wow, August 16th.
I just love. So this
Chautauqua Week.
Chautauqua Week. There it is. I know.
Yeah.
It's down to.
So she went to the Battle Day Parade. She went to Chautauqua Week, and it was too much on her heart.
I guess so.
Was this the one that was flattened by
This is the one. So the other interesting thing, I love newspapers. So this is talk about like going down the rabbit hole and finding stuff. You start looking at stuff. Right next to Josephine's obituary on the front page of the banner in August of 1915, Chautauqua tent flattened by heavy wind.
Wow.
Storm causes much damage. So apparently it was a very stormy night, and I think they may have moved into the opera house in the library. Yes. It's just such a great, and that's just one person, you know, connected to town events, and then we're off and running, learning about all the things that happened.
For the people inside the house. I mean, that's all good stuff.
Yeah, it's the people in the house.
Yeah.
I mean, there were things about her. She gave a interesting and helpful talk on Library Day in May of 1915. Visitors present with pupils made an audience of about 400. I mean, there's all these pieces of the Young Men's Association, which ran the library and established it. They ran the library early, did a tribute of resolutions of respect to her. There were so many pieces about, you know, when one person, and then you keep finding things, other people, and it just kind of keeps building. That is just one small person from this whole history of this house, which is still here.
We got librarians and Civil War soldiers.
Librarians and Civil War soldiers.
And mill people and superintendents.
I can pull up the film and show you what that looks like for...
What's that?
Actually, we'll stay in here for Daniel's, her father's obituary. The next owners were Gibneys.
Well, you know, one thing we didn't talk about, just jumping back and forth here a little bit.
That's okay, we love to jump back and forth.
With Richie. He died on March 27th, 1911 of pneumonia.
Yes, oh yeah.
And I found his will in Ancestry. And he had a prenup. And so he came from Pittsfield, and he had this prenup. And so the prenup excluded Hattie,
I think.
his wife, his second wife.
Yes.
Because they both were...
I think they had agreed, yeah.
Yeah, they had agreed. They both were older, and they both had their own estates. So he excluded her from the will. So everything went to the sons and daughters.
Yep.
So and also Richie was buried in Pittsfield.
Yes.
So he had Pittsfield connections, but that was interesting. I thought that the prenuptial agreement excluded Hattie, and she probably didn't care because she was well off anyway. So they
Yeah.
just moved on.
Yeah, because we looked at the dates and they
Yeah.
were married together later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His first wife passed away at a much earlier time there.
So much fun.
Yeah.
So
that was
many
interesting.
little pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can. But this is fun. Imagine this is your family.
Yeah,
If you're doing this for your family.
Yeah, and you
you're
find
kind
that
of
your great grandmother was excluded from the estate because of whatever that prenup, which I think I don't know if that's unusual for the period or
oh.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
she got sent packing. So
Keeler comes along. Like I said, he was the manager at the Bradford Mill, so he
Yeah.
had his own. I mean, I think one of the things we really realized when we looked at the legacy of the CAT-TV property was that it had been so well preserved and maintained, and and we looked at the owners. They were kind of large people in town.
they were fairly well off. They were upper middle class,
There's
maybe,
some-
or
yeah.
whatever class you want to put them in.
Not a lot of a
know.
lot of property movement.
No,
Stayed
and,
pretty consistent.
And Keeler, he was the vice president of the Bradford Company.
Yep. He had
So
moved,
he
he had
was,
moved up. We'll look at his obit.
Yeah.
And then the Keeler home is purchased by, it just says, I'm blanking
Now,
on
at
Gibney's
some
first
point,
name.
also in 1925, the address changes.
Yes, and we saw that on the map.
Yeah,
It goes
goes
from
from-
619 to 625.
Yeah, which can throw you if you're looking for research and you
Yes.
got to watch that. I'm not sure if all the addresses changed in Bennington or this might just have been
Pieces.
Main Street. You don't know.
Pieces, yeah. Yeah.
And that happened. That'll happen again when 9/11 came out. They changed the addresses again. So if you're looking at current stuff, you got to watch it. But anyway, so that.
So we can bring in the more kind of contemporary piece that people might remember, which is that before CAT-TV was CAT-TV, it was a
Yeah.
funeral home. And it's interesting to kind of look at that piece from May of 1941. There was an article, Thomas Gibney opens new mortuary today.
Yeah.
That was his property on Safford Street.
Right. He had another location.
But I do love, I'm just going to keep reading you bits of Bennington newspaper. Mr. Gibney is a Bennington lad who was graduated from the Reynard School of Embalming in New York City some years ago, and who had considerable experience in the mortuary department of the Bellevue Hospital before he returned to Bennington to take up his work among his townspeople. You just don't get stuff like this.
Yeah.
So he's at Safford Street. And then in May of 1945, he purchases the Daniel Keeler home, the residence on Main Street, which for many years, again, the property stays with families.
And Keeler died in 1934, and the family stayed there until 42 or thereabouts.
Yeah, the reporting of sale is 45 here. But again, this is where you go to your record of transfer of property.
Yeah, so in 45, May 12th, the Banner reported that the Thomas Gibney purchases the funeral home and turns it into a funeral home.
Yes. The Keeler residence offers spacious and commodious accommodations.
Commodious.
For the use of mourners, and is desirably located within easy access to the business district. I mean, it was an ideal, the 625 Main Street was an ideal property. Transfer of furnishings will begin within the next few days, and it is expected that the new location will be available for use within the next month after the completion of some remodeling and redecoration. In the meantime, there will be no interruption of service rendered by the funeral home. So don't worry. Everyone was cared for.
Go ahead and do what you got to do. We'll take care of you.
Let nature, yes. So the Gibneys purchased the home.
And that's where we had that article.
Here we go.
Article from the Rock Ribs of Bennington.
Rock Ribs of Bennington. Now that's a little, Thomas, there's a little brothers, there's brothers here.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right? Thomas had opened the mortuary, and I'm cheating and looking at my notes.
That's not cheating.
Or that note. James and Thomas together, because I believe those were the brothers. I think James was called Dash. That's a separate. Another resource when we were starting to get into more contemporary history was this book, which you mentioned, called The Rock Ribs of Bennington Town, which is a very, very helpful book.
Yeah.
Covers a certain year. Basically, the effort was made to include every business in Bennington in 1976.
Wow.
So sometimes when people are asking about...
Pretty daunting task.
It is a daunting task.
And the thing is, it's 1 year in time, and all those places change so often.
George Hadwin, and I'm pretty sure, I feel
dedicated.
badly with this commendation of George Hadwin. Actually, he got a commendation from the Office of the Lieutenant Governor. Hadwin Publishing Banner, there's a connection. I think I feel badly that I didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is a fantastic resource. You can read more about Hadwin and how this came to be. But we were talking about this, and I said, I bet you the property's in here, and we knew it as the Gibney Funeral Home.
Yeah.
So we'd actually found this beautiful entry, and there's a picture of it, circa late 70s.
Of course,
Gibney.
it says in a lovely 1700s home, which is wrong, but other than that, it's fine.
Well, you only know, this is an entry for the funeral home with a picture of Helen Gibney, who was the director at the time. She was married to James Dash Gibney, and the nickname is right in here. Yes, lovely home, hand-carved paneled ceilings, original fireplaces with a tile. She was a nurse, worked in public health, district nurse, health officer. She actually took over the funeral home after James Dash Gibney passed away. He had run the home with Raymond Petit and John Kane. And after this was, and he had started the business with his brother Thomas, so Thomas had bought it. They had worked it together. Yeah.
So there's good information in there.
This is a really fabulous example. We talked about this about a woman-owned business, and that she was a nurse, and so Kane. John Kane, who helped run it, served as the manager, but Helen obtained her funeral director's license by examination from the state in November 1973.
That's pretty cool.
She
went
got her
ahead
license.
And she, at that point, she probably was in her 50s or so, or older maybe, when she got that license. So
yeah, she
that's pretty cool.
ran the funeral home for many
There's a
years.
good picture of the building there, too.
Picture of the building, picture of Helen.
This goes to show you, when you read these things, though, in a lovely 1700s home, you gotta make note of that and
That's
then
what they knew.
pursue it. Don't take everything for sure.
Yeah, or take it tentatively.
Yeah.
And then that kind of helps you a little bit because it's 1866 and we're still,
Yeah, but
yeah.
work things out. Don't stop there.
Multiple sources, multiple verifiable
Yes,
sources.
that's the key.
We'd like to put the plug in for that.
And a lot of this stuff, we could go for years researching this stuff. We got as much as we can, I think.
We could. So I do want to show the microfilm because it's so much fun.
Well, but the final step here is that she sells the Gibney Funeral Home to CAT-TV in 2002.
And thank you. In 2002. You're so helpful.
And that's in the obituary.
That is in the obituary.
Yeah.
I should make a point that the library does have the Bennington Banner, a text archive only, free, that starts late 1999, but basically 2003-ish. Starts in late 1999, picks up a little spotty. But we found Helen Gibney's obit in that text archive, and that's where it verifies that in 2002, Helen sold... Oh, ready for this? This is how they phrase it in her obituary. In 2002, Helen sold the historic Civil War-era funeral home to CAT-TV.
Good. That's a good statement.
Isn't that? There you go.
Civil War era. That's a good...
So that's another piece of accessing the banner. I really want to show you microfilm.
Yeah.
You know how much I enjoy.
One thing, though, before we do that...
Yes.
You did the microfilm in the newspapers, and you found a lot of really cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I, on the other hand, was looking at Ancestry, and I turned up, some of the same stuff
Yes.
and some of different stuff. I was
Yes.
able to find wills. I was able to find the census reports. And these are pretty cool because they list everybody in the household.
Yes.
Here's Alexander Ritchie's the census of no, it's not the census of that, but I got it here.
Oh, the tree. Yeah.
I got
both
it. This was a family
Ancestry-
tree that was in there.
Both Ancestry
But the
and
census
Family
shows
Search will
who
have
lived in the
trees.
house, their occupations, and all the people in the house and their relationships.
Yeah.
It shows how long they've been living there sometimes. It shows you where they were born. And as you get later on, it'll show you, do they have a telephone? Can they read and write?
We talked about, yeah.
So there's
yeah.
a lot of stuff in
Yes.
the census reports that really tells you what's going on.
So think about that
You
when
know.
you complete your census. You're preserving
Yeah.
data and history for future
And-
generations.
and,
Participate.
And sometimes the census reports, this is some person who is doing this, and he's probably getting paid. I don't know how he's getting paid.
Census
He wants to
workers.
get this done, so it's not always as
Yeah.
accurate as you got to use it.
You
a little
gotta,
grain
again,
of salt.
kind of
Again,
check.
question things because the census reports are human.
Are as good as what was
Yeah.
captured at the
The
time
input.
available.
Stuff in,
everything.
stuff out.
Yep. Double check.
So-
Verify.
But we should thank Ann Bugby
Again.
and Bill Morgan and Joe Hall. All guys
they're
that,
all in
all
here.
people that provided us information, backup information, and without them we would have been a little bit waylaid. But
Oh, yes.
they were
There's
all
a
good
lot of
people.
people. We're kind of using
know.
sources that were compiled
And
by others. Yeah.
Jane Radakia,
Jane Radakia.
she also provided information which will
Hopefully we'll
we'll show
meet
later,
her, or at least talk more about her.
about the construction of the building, so she was
Architectural
helpful
history.
as well. So there's
Yes.
there's a bunch of people.
Yes.
So
Can we look at film
I guess that
quickly?
rests my case. I think
Oh, that's
we-
not resting your case. You'll be bit. Don't worry. There's always more.
So I think we've penciled in
so many things.
the information on the people that live there,
The people.
and
it's
my
all
battery's
about.
running
It's
low
all
here.
about the people. And Bob's battery's running low.
It's microfilm time. To the reference desk we go.
Do we get popcorn with this film?
It's my favorite sound.
Oh boy, you are.
I am such a geek for this. And people, like, this is my doing, I'll confess. Like, number 1, turn this on. Number 2, wait for startup. Number 3, wait until noises stop. Because literally this thing will get upset with you if you don't. This is the PowerScan 3000 microfilm reader scanner.
Wow.
We can save the images and we can email them to people,
So you
which
can-
is really...
You can save them on a flash drive or something.
You can save them on a flash drive. You can email them to people. We can
I'm gonna
print.
start coming over here.
So much fun. Got this a little over 10 years ago, so it is, I'm like very,
I think I used
my
this one
baby.
time a couple years ago.
open the software, more fun, but a lot of people, in the age of, if you go to Chronicling America and all this stuff is digitized, it's mouse clicks and it's really, really fast. Well, this is microfilm, this is 35 millimeter microfilm.
This is cool.
And it is. Microfilm, gets a bad rap, but it is a cheaper method of preservation, and it lasts a long time. That's why we still have it.
Yeah.
So that's why it still works. So this is the Bennington Evening Banner from January to March of 1934. We're actually just going to open up Daniel B. Keeler's obituary, and if you're
Now threading it is always.
threading it is fun, and you know what? Why am I not getting my... There it is. I love the little diagram. If you're not accustomed to threading it, the machine will give you a diagram.
Oh my
I
God.
thread
That's
it all the
cool.
time.
Yeah.
So we are looking for February 26th, which is right in the middle of the roll. So everyone who has never used a tape deck, a cassette, people love this.
What's a
I'm
cassette?
going to high speed forward the film to get to the middle of the roll,
Wow.
which is a lot of fun. And I have to get a sense of where I am. So February 26th, and you're kind of just figuring out, and everyone gets alarmed when I put the film and it doesn't look good right away, but it has the fancy auto adjust button.
Wow, this is high tech.
This is high tech. And of course now it's not going to auto adjust because...
Of course not.
Doesn't like that one. That's interesting. Oh, you know what it is? I've asked it to do too much too quickly. Okay. See if it'll manual straighten here for me or not. Dun, dun, dun. It's thinking about it. It's thinking about
This
it.
is good. This is good. Good
It's
stuff.
working on it.
There's the prime roast beef at the A&P. Cigarettes, $1.19.
22 cents a pound.
$1.19 for cigarettes?
This is 1934.
Wait, cigarettes seem dear for $1.19. Is that, or is that a pack?
I've asked it to do
Must
too much
be a
again.
pack.
Okay, so this is, I can tell, I'm used to looking at this, so I'm going to jump ahead a bit. This is February.
Oh.
It has a little magnifier
Oh my
feature.
gosh, how'd you do that?
I pressed the magnifier
Oh,
button.
man.
So this is February 16th.
1934.
We have to get to February 26th.
Well, that's
And I'm
cool.
doing kind of a slower fast forward here because I want to get to the 26th. And I'm on the 26th. I'm using my little magnifier function, but I'm kind of used to where stuff is. So we're on the 26th.
You're there.
I'm pretty sure he's on page 1 because he's
Should be.
pretty important.
There it is,
There
David
he is.
Keeler.
I'm going to close the magnifier. This is Daniel B. Keeler Dyes, manager of Bradford Mill. I'm going to zoom. Has a very nice zoom function.
Oh, that is cool.
17-year-old executive began career when he was a small boy. And you can capture this, you know, with the green arrows. We can, you know, we can kind of bring it in. And this is how you've seen the other printouts that I've done. I could save this, you know, just
But you can clip it then?
clip it, save it, do all that kind of stuff. Email, like I said, email print, JPEG, PDF. It's really kind of nice. The piece that, again, this is another example of it's a little. It is microfilm, and you have to remember, again, you're talking, so you're taking physical microfilm and it's speaking digitally. So there is a little, that's kind of the character of the beast. He went from mill to mill throughout the Mohawk Valley, Utica, Little Falls, and back to Cohoes. This diversified experience and the contacts with varying methods ably fitted him for the places of trust he was to fill and continue to
Wow.
fill during the remainder of his life.
It's the Horatio Alger
It
myth,
is.
you know?
No, it gets better. It was a school of hard knocks, and some of its teachings remained with him to the end of his days. His persistent industry and determination to get ahead found a responsive chord in the hearts of executives with whom he came in contact, and some of them endeavored to supply the deficiencies of his limited education. Even after he had risen to places of supervision, he became an attendant at night school, so that in later years he had drilled himself in many branches of knowledge necessary to the career he had decided to follow. This is Daniel B. Keeler,
Now that
you know, continuing to learn.
I should be playing music in the background.
I know,
you say
and
that, you know?
that is the flavor.
Yeah, and the same thing with Richie.
Yeah,
You know, he was a clerk in Pittsfield and a Scottish immigrant.
yeah, and you get even like personal. He was abrupt in speech, but at heart kindly and considerate of those with whom he was associated. Like you get the flavor of
Yeah,
these people
yeah.
in these early newspaper articles. So
Bob, we are winding down from our flurry of research here at the Bennington Free Library. If you are still with us, you win popcorn.
Oh, I didn't get any popcorn yet, but anyway, we did a lot of stuff today, and next time, for our final episode, we're going to journey to the property at 625 Main Street, the home of CAT-TV, and take a real look at the house inside and out. So be sure to join us then.
Join us.